Welcome to He Say, She Say, the live stream where legal principles meet the heart. I'm Shar, founder of Law for Love, the most special place in the legal system in Atlanta. And after nearly 14 years as a divorce attorney, I realized that the very same tools that we use to end marriages can actually be used to save them. So I completely changed my path and now am here to help you navigate the challenges of love, commitment, and communication. Join us as we explore how to rebuild and strengthen your marriage one conversation at a time. Hey, welcome in, and hugs, love, butterflies, all of that beautiful stuff to you all as we dive into a very important topic tonight. And it is one that challenges from what I've been able to gather, observe, witness, and share. Every marriage goes through uh, feelings of being alone. And why would I expect to be alone or feel alone when I married someone? This is a really, really big frustration for a lot of people. And unfortunately, it leads to more frustration down the road when you are not properly prepared for navigating it. So we're going to dive in to give you some encouragement, some tips, some insight, just some life. Like, can we just do some lifing tonight and really talk about the real when people are feeling alone in their marriage? And the key understanding that I hope you walk away with after this discussion tonight and this little stroll through one of the chapters of the Bible is that life is about seasons. Not just your marriage, but life is cyclical. And when we begin to understand seasons and where we are in our seasons, we can then move with more intentionality, more wisdom, and more insight, not only about ourselves and not only about the person that we're married to, but also about life and the bigger picture of life. So today's foundation comes out of Ecclesiastes verses 1-8. And what we're going to do, we're going to go through each and every one of these verses, which are the foundation for understanding the seasons of life, and not just life back in the olden days, but life since the beginning, and life so long as we are a race of human beings, of created beings in this realm we call Earth. To everything, there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. This is talking about our realm where we live, Earth, and everything, including, yes, your relationship, seasons that we need to understand so that we can have the proper perspective and that we can navigate it without feeling frustrated. And that's why we're going through verses 1-8 of Ecclesiastes. So it dives right in, and it says there's a time to be born and a time to die. So yes, there's a time for all of us. We all came to the earth, and we all will, we'll take our last breath one day. But when it comes to why you're feeling lonely in your marriage and how to deal with it, how to stop feeling lonely, consider this. When you first got married, that's when your closeness or your intimacy was born, right? That's when the closeness came to life. But when you enter into a season of, I call it a season of alone, a season of aloneness. Every marriage experiences it. So there was like that honeymoon. Why do we call it a honeymoon? Because it is a season of closeness. It is when people are first coming into this intimate space, this commitment of marriage, and all they could think about is one another. All they want to do is be with one another. All you want is to be laid up with one another. But then there's that departure from that season of closeness, and it comes and goes, family. It comes and goes. And what's frustrating is that We don't always have shared spaces to talk about this honestly, right? And when the season of alone comes and you navigate through the season of alone, then what you can expect, especially if you're doing the right things when you're feeling that distance from your spouse, when you're in a season of alone, if you are being intentional when you are alone, then what it's going to do not only restore closeness when the season comes back around for your closeness, but it's going to enhance intimacy. And so as we continue to walk through this passage, you'll see exactly what I mean. What can you do during your season of alone that you're not focusing on the fact that you're alone, but you are working towards the season to come, because it's going to come in cycles. You're going to be close, then you're going to be alone, then you're going to be close, then you're going to be alone. So when you're alone, this is an opportunity, and I'll be the first one to tell you, don't nobody want to feel alone, right? You have some people who they don't need as much time and attention, or they're more introverted and really enjoy time to themselves. Some people just really are like that. But even introverts desire connection with other human beings. And we were created in community. We were created to be close. And when it comes to the person that you married, you definitely want to feel close to this person. And those seasons are going to come and they're going to go. They're like they flow in and out. So when you're in a season of alone, what can you do? Well, let's look at the next section of this scripture. A time to plant and a time to pluck up which was planted. When you are in an alone season, when you are not feeling close to your husband or to your wife, then this is the time where you want to start planting, right? The season of alone is where you get to plant love seeds. And that's in the open communication. Just because you're feeling alone doesn't mean you stop talking to each other, which is a big mistake people make when they feel like they're angry at their husband or their wife because they're feeling alone and they really don't know how to process that feeling. Well, you don't just shut down. You don't just stop communicating. You want to continue to communicate openly. And it's okay to say, you know what? Here's one for y'all, a real easy one. Challenge you on this one. If you are in a season of alone in your marriage right now, try telling your husband or your wife, you know what? I really miss you right now. That doesn't mean you're instantly going to be feeling like you have all this time to be together. All of a sudden, life and circumstances of work and kids, all this other stuff gets in the way. But if you're feeling alone, express that rather than shutting down, which is what a lot of people do. Spending quality time together to nurture emotional bonds. Just because you're feeling alone doesn't mean that you completely pull back. So what people do is they feel alone, they're hurting, they don't like that they're in this season because they don't understand that they're in a season. So then they kind of punish their spouse by pulling all the way away. It's almost like, if I could describe the thought process, it's like, well, if I'm gonna be alone, I'm gonna just go ahead and be all the way alone. I'm going to control how alone I feel. If I'm going to be alone, I'm going to be alone on my own terms. Like wanting to take control of it and kind of like own it, but at the same time alienating your spouse. You don't want to do that. So wherever you have an opportunity to spend quality time, yes, you're feeling alone, you're not feeling as close, but take advantage of those quality time moments. And kindness kindness goes so far. And this is from husbands and from wives. When you can find little things, even though you're not feeling as close to your sweetheart as you would like to, even though there might be some things y'all need to talk about, and we're going to get into that in a little while. And even though things may be strained or you just might be in a season, you can still be kind to one another. I'd love to just go ahead and take this as an opportunity to brag on my husband during one of our seasons of alone, where my reaction to the aloneness was very I went to the extreme, like I was really, really frustrated and upset about being in a season of alone. And so I went overboard with pushing my husband away while trying to sort out what I was feeling. And I knew that it hurt him the way that I was dealing with the season, but I really didn't have the bandwidth. I had reached a point where many professional women reach exhaustion, exhaustion from saving the world, exhaustion from fixing everyone else's problem, exhaustion from showing up in professional spaces, being everything for everybody. And because I had exhausted all of my resources, I knew he was hurting, but I didn't have bandwidth to care. And when I say that, especially for you husbands, if you have an executive wife, a high functioning wife, maybe she's ripping and running and taking care of the stuff with the kids, she's working outside of the house, she's running a business, she's that person that everyone calls for advice or when they have problems, then your wife in exhaustion will get to a point where she loves you and she cares about what you got going on, but she doesn't have the bandwidth to care. And that's a totally different conversation. But I mention it because I'm talking about practicing acts of kindness. My husband was in a place where I was not coping well with being in this season of alone. And although I was hurting him in the way that I was dealing with it, he continued consistently every Friday to buy me something that he knew that I liked. Little things, like he knows that I love kombucha. He'd bring me back 2 bottles of the brand of kombucha and the flavors that I like. And he would leave them in the refrigerator. Even if I wasn't willing to speak to him, I knew on Saturday morning, and he continued to demonstrate this act of kindness towards me when I was struggling in a season of alone. And so that's what I mean when I talk about kindness. It could be a little thing. If your spouse is struggling with, they don't particularly like doing laundry and you're in a season of alone, you taking on the laundry and doing it for them, small acts that can go a very long way for you to plant in that season, because they will return to you a harvest when you're no longer in your season of alone. And creating shared goals and experiences. What I like to say here when it comes to you being in a season of alone, get super clear on what you want, and meeting with yourself and having conversations with yourself about things that are going well and things that you would like to see go better, and map out your goals and your dreams when you're in that alone time, and get super duper honest with yourself, so that when you come back into connection or back to closeness, when that season returns to your marriage, then you cultivate that shared goal or dream. Does that make sense? And there's a time to pluck up. According to the wisdom here, the wisdom of the earth, this is literally the laws of earth, right? So there are things that you can stop doing, that you can pluck up. These negative things, the withdrawing, emotionally withdrawing from your spouse. Criticizing is one of those things that we all in any season of our marriage, but especially when you're in a season of feeling alone or distance from each other, just pluck up criticism. Find something nice to say, something good to say. Resentment, grudges, there is never there is never not a good time to forgive and to let things go. But when you are in a season of alone, again, you are spending more time in your thoughts and your emotions with yourself. Take inventory of the things that have been bothering you, things you've been holding on to, things that you low key are acting out of a little get back with, or what I call it, petty. Look, pluck that out, resolve it. Or as I like to say, go ahead and choose to forgive your husband or your wife, even if your feelings haven't caught up with the choice to forgive yet. You can forgive even when you don't feel like you've forgiven. Choose to forgive and let your feelings catch up with that decision. And another thing to pluck up, when you're navigating through a season of alone, take a look at your behaviors that may have contributed to your spouse not feeling as connected to you. We all have selfish little ways and things that we do that contribute to distance in our marriage, which kind of it leads up to a season of alone or pulling away. And so look at how you have been contributing to it and come up with a plan on how you can rework your routines or your habits so that your spouse can feel more connected to you when you come out of your alone season. A time to kill and a time to heal. What do we want to kill? We want to kill, again, the communication. 99% of the time, marriages are falling in disrepair. And the reason given by one or both spouses is lack of communication, just horrible communication. We don't know how to resolve conflict. And so when you are alone, take a look at how you're showing up in the marriage. Are you showing up blaming? Are you showing up gaslighting? Are you showing up with unkind words? And while you're alone, take advantage of owning that this is something you have the power to kill. This doesn't have to be a team project. When you are feeling alone or you recognize that you are in a season of alone, sometimes it sneaks up on you and you're like, oh gosh, here go one of those seasons. And they will come and go and they will come and go and they will always come and go. But again, you want to kill the contribution that you're making that may be pushing your spouse away from you and your spouse is not feeling as connected to you. And then there's your habits as well, things that you're doing that are not inviting your spouse into closeness with you. And take an honest inventory of where you can do better while you're alone anyway. Be tougher on yourself when you are feeling alone, because what most people do is sit around and want to get mad at their spouse for why they feel alone. Again, we don't want to feel alone. Seeing it as the opportunity that it is gives you a chance to go into your corner. I like to think of it like a boxing match. You go into your corner, they go into their corner, and you get your water, you get your coaching, you tighten up in your corner while your spouse tightens up in their corner. Or even if they're not tightening up, you will make the world of difference if you are making the choice to tighten up in your corner. And kill any unresolved conflict that you have. If it's dealing with the fact that your feelings were hurt, we walk around looking like pin cushions because words are like arrows, right? And then they penetrate you right in your heart. And then some people are walking around with 100 arrows sticking up out of their heart, looking like a pin cushion. Deal with that when you're alone. That is not always for your husband or for your wife to deal with. Most of the time it's for you to deal with from the standpoint of choosing to forgive him or choosing to forgive her before you are back in a season of connection. Deal with it when you're by yourself and you won't feel lonely. You'll feel like this was the perfect opportunity for you to work on some stuff that only you can work on. And of course, again, the proverb here says that there's a time to heal. Forgiveness. I cannot overemphasize forgiveness. Reaffirming love and commitment. Why not tell your husband or tell your wife, I only have eyes for you. There's no one else in the world for me but you. You're the most beautiful woman in the world. You are the sexiest man alive. Reaffirm to your sweetheart how committed you are and how much your heart is connected to them, even when you are feeling alone. There's nothing stopping you from saying, hey, I never want to live my life without you. Words like that, they are sowing into healing, because a lot of times when you're feeling alone in the marriage, your husband or your wife, they're feeling alone too. And when we're in this season of alone, one of the biggest dangers is that we start playing mind tricks with ourselves and start asking, well, they don't love me no more, or wondering why you're feeling so distant. Well, when you now recognize that this is just a season, it's going to come and it's going to go, just like every storm in life, it's going to come and it's going to go. You definitely want to go in on those healing words and you want to say sweet nothings, true nothings to your sweetheart about your love and your commitment. If you have a pet name that you haven't been using, why not? The season of alone, the time of this season is the main time that you definitely want to come in and use those kind of words. And prioritizing emotional intimacy, it can be tricky, right? And emotional intimacy can be super duper simple. So I'm going to give you an example again out of my own marriage because during a season of alone that I was navigating several years ago, I was kind of doing the same inventory that I'm sharing with you. What can I be doing? How can I be doing things better? Because in this particular season, I was frustrated and I honestly didn't have anything nice to say to my husband, and I had nothing nice to say about him. So I just chose not to talk about him at all. Look, they used to tell you back in the days, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Well, that was where I was practicing during this particular season. And so I got the idea. I suppose it was I suppose it was the Holy Spirit that said, "You know what? Before you lay your head on your pillow tonight, before you go to bed, say something sweet to him. Say something sweet." Okay. So in that moment, I go to bed that night and before I fall asleep, I say good night to my husband and I called him some kind of dessert. So let's say I called him a chocolate fudge brownie. And he was like a little taken aback because again, I really wasn't saying much to him. We were in a season of alone, and I really had nothing nice to say because I was frustrated with life was lifing, right? Well, the next night came, and I did the same thing right before I went to bed. Good night, I love you. And I called him. I said to him, "You're my key lime pie with whipped cream." And he was like, "Okay." And I went to bed. Well, Wednesday night came, or the third night came. I believe this was a Monday through Wednesday type of situation. The third night came, and I called him a different dessert. It was, I don't know, Dutch apple pie a la mode. And he said, "Okay, we did the I love you, good night thing." Well, when the fourth night came, I had a long week at work that week, and I was ready. I was ready for some sleep, and I went to bed, told him good night, I love you, and I forgot to say something sweet to him. And right before I fell asleep, he said to me, "No dessert tonight?" See, we were in a season of alone, but there was an emotional intimacy from just saying something sweet. It's not always about you crying on each other's shoulder or pouring out your whole heart, especially if you're in a season of alone. You need to be working more on your own emotional connection with yourself and really articulating to yourself what it is you're feeling and why. And when in this season that I just described to you, I realized that I was frustrated and I had nothing nice to say. I had nothing sweet to say. I had nothing, no words that were going to conduct emotional intimacy. But all praise to the most high, he gave me the creativity to use dessert as an opportunity to sow into that emotional intimacy. And now, I mean, I want to say that was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. That practice, the dessert game, it's still something that's it's very alive and well in our relationship as a part of our emotional intimacy, especially during our alone seasons. And so, if you are in a season of alone, you're feeling lonely, say something sweet. And maybe dessert isn't your thing, but maybe it could be something else cute and funny, something that's an inside joke for both of you. But make a priority to have that emotional connection, even if it's just a one-liner once a day. Rebuilding trust through consistent and loving actions that show commitment to growth. So it is very endearing and it's very encouraging when your husband or your wife sees you working on some stuff that you've been neglecting that only you can take care of. So whether it's you getting up and doing something about your health, maybe it's your nutrition, maybe it's your lack of exercise, maybe it's you actually taking the time to go in anything that you've been too busy to take care of or too busy to invest time in that's going to make your relationship better by making you better. It will rebuild trust when your husband or your wife sees you working on something that they were telling you or kind of dropping hints or telling you, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? When they stop talking about it, and a lot of times when you're in that lonely season, your spouse is thinking these things and they're tired of talking about it. So they just stop saying anything at all. Take an inventory of those things that your husband or your wife was suggesting. Hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And start make a plan and start working consistently on that plan for yourself because it will gain the respect and rebuild trust with your spouse. A time to break down and a time to build up. Oh no, I got signed out of my drive. Y'all see this? Do you see this? I'm signed out of my drive in the middle of my life because this is my assignment tonight. Just like last week, y'all, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do in this space. I am going to talk to you about the real about marriage. I'm going to encourage you about your marriage. I am not going to sit up here and play these games with the robot and be frustrated in delivering this encouragement and these insights to you. Let me try to get myself back into my account where my notes are. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do next week. Though I bet you I have them printed out. We just gonna have to go analog if the robot is just gonna continue to insist on playing games during my live. But I'm not making that up. Y'all saw that live, right? We're talking about building marriages instead of tearing them down and the nonsense. All right. A time to break down and a time to build. I'm telling you, bro, Red. I appreciate look, I appreciate each and every one of you for like showing up, supporting, and praying me through because y'all saying this for yourself. I'm not making this stuff up. Last week I'm locked out of StreamYard. This week my drive shuts down and kicks me out in the middle of the live stream. I'm not making this up, family. But we gonna keep this party going. So a time to break down and a time to build up. So what do we want to break down? We want to break down unrealistic expectations. This is one of my favorite things to do in my season when we are not as close and connected in my marriage. Where am I being unrealistic? The longer you're with somebody, the more historical facts and evidence you have of who this person is and who this person will continue to be. And I'm definitely talking to the ladies right here. For whatever reason, we get it in our mind and in our heart that we are going to change our man. We are going to make him be the person that we want him to be. We're going to make him change his habits to suit our needs. We're going to make him not be himself anymore. And this is one of the biggest unrealistic expectations why we show up and are being unkind and disrespectful to our husbands when all they're doing is being themselves. Yes, ladies, I'm going in on us right here when I talk about breaking down unrealistic expectations. I'm not saying that men don't do the same thing. I'm saying that it's more of an endemic among women. We want to change who he is, but he is the person that you married. And so, what you want to do, you want to build up your marriage and you want to build up closeness by accepting him for who he is. Don't you want to be accepted for who you are? You know, we as women, again, I'm going to go on a little rant right here. We as women, we want our husbands to accept that every month we have issues where we're not feeling our very best and where we want to have a little extra grace for us having an attitude or not feeling our very best. And we want to be accepted for that reality of where we're showing up in our marriage every moon. But with our husbands, we're not willing to give him the same acceptance and the same grace when he's just being himself. Accepting him for who he is and all that is good about him and all that gets on your ever loving nerves is an act of compassion and loving kindness that we all receive from the Most High. And so, yes, ladies, and husbands too, but I'm going in on the ladies in this moment. Genuinely accept your husband for who he is. And I have a quick story for you on this point. I received a call several years ago from a lady who is a friend of one of my relatives. So we're not directly friends, but we're friendly enough. You know, if I see her, I'm glad to see her. And but she's not my close friend. She's a close friend of someone else in my family. Well, she called me out of the blue and she was sharing with me these pictures and this story about this amazing weekend that she just had because she, very busy business owner, was tired and exhausted from being superwoman. And her husband took notice. And what he decided to do, he decided to treat her to a weekend where he just gave her the whole spa treatment. And what this brother did, he set her up in a hotel downtown. He covered the sheets with rose petals. He scheduled her a spa day and just all of these lovely little notes of gratitude he had given her and letting her know how much he appreciated her for how hard she works and that he was noticing. Well, what she ended up telling me about that weekend and why it meant so much to her was that after more than 20 years of their marriage, she had finally gotten the revelation not too long before this event just to accept her husband for who he was and to stop trying to change him. Would you know that less than 9 months after this incredible, like, celebration of who she is, celebration of who he is, her acceptance of just loving him for who he was and being over trying to change him, this man died unexpectedly. Her husband had died unexpectedly. And she had only turned the corner in their marriage only a few years before his death to stop trying to change him and just love him. It was her loving him and accepting him why he got to the point where he loved on her the way that he loved on her that weekend. And I think about that so much like, wow, I'm so thankful for her sake that she understood that while he was still with her, and that those last months that they had together was so full of genuine acceptance because that's the revelation that they met in their marriage before he met an untimely death. Well, I'm about to cry thinking about it. Y'all know I'm a waterhead, so leave me alone. A time to weep. See, right on time. It's time for me to cry because, like, I'm thinking about I'm thinking about how much regret she would have had she not learned how to love and accept her husband. Y'all gonna let me cry. A time to weep and a time to laugh. Yes. I'm so thankful for her sake that she got that revelation. And then she called me out of the blue, of all people. Like I said, I'm like, me and her, we are not down like that. Why she felt it necessary to call me, only the Most High knows. It had to be just for being able to share that with other people in this marriage space. Um, Here's a reflection for you. A time to weep and a time to laugh. So I just cried for all of us, but don't ever hesitate to cry your cry. Squeeze your tear out. It's all right to cry. Um, have you begun to self-protect yourself in your relationship? Are you pulling away to protect yourself? And are you willing to employ courage to be vulnerable with your spouse and express unresolved feelings that you have with them? Things that if you're by yourself, you're actually crying, and let them know, hey, this really hurt. Are you willing to let your husband or your wife see you in that vulnerable state? Now I know some of y'all brothers, y'all not gonna cry, and it's okay. I'm not asking y'all to cry tears, but what I am asking you is, are you willing to take courage to talk to your husband or your wife about your unresolved feelings, something that's hurting you? Because the end goal, after you have those vulnerable moments, again, we're talking about seasons, we're talking about cycles. So it's one day we're crying and the next day we're laughing. Because laughter is a powerful conductor for healing. The scripture actually says that the laughter does our heart, our mind, our thoughts, our mental health. It does us good like medicine. Laughter is literally a medicine. Have you been taking yourself too seriously? Is everything all serious all the time? Are you all crunched up and scrunched up without any time to laugh or to play? When is the last time you were willing to laugh at yourself and create space for your spouse to laugh at you, laugh with you, to help you heal? Hold on. What's this? That's why you should treat your spouse with love and respect. Each season is different. There are seasons of spring, summer, fall, and winter. Yes, it's all a cycle. There's even a book about that. Is it called The Four Seasons, Sister Patea? Yes, accept, and then cry. Look, accept your spouse for who they are, and then cry. They're not changing. I'm sorry, y'all. I like to say, because that's how we create an atmosphere for healing in my house through play and through laughter. When I finally stopped taking myself so seriously, it actually created room in my home and gave everyone else permission to laugh and to have fun and to let their hair down. And I was the one that had that key. And that's why I ask you these questions. And the goal is to laugh again, to play again, because the season's going to pass. Will you have something to laugh about, even while you're going through? A time to mourn and a time to dance. Now, with this one, I had to pull out my cup of coffee as a touch point, because mourning, especially when there's like a loss of a loved one. So mourning isn't just limited to someone dying. Mourning could be someone losing a job. Mourning could be someone losing a friendship, a close and dear friendship. Mourning could be a parting of ways from a close family member you've always had in your life, but you realize, like how Job and I'm not Job, Abraham did with his nephew Lot. All right, You pick your side, and I'm gonna pick mine, and I'm gonna go in the opposite direction, and they had to part ways. There is a mourning when you love somebody, and then that season of closeness to that person comes to an end. Someone outside is someone that you're not married to. There's mourning there, and yes, the in my opinion, the worst type of mourning when someone passes away. And most marriages are going to navigate this season where there's mourning. And yes, you can find yourself, and I've seen it in broken marriages where a loved one passes away, and then the spouse who, maybe let's say they lost their parent, the spouse whose parent just died now feels like their husband or their wife is not close to them and holding them down through that season. It is it is pain compounded upon pain. And I want you to know that this is one of the worst types of ways to navigate mourning. But if there's nothing else that you remember this cup of coffee. And remember that life is like a cup of coffee. You learn how to take the bitter with the sweet. See, what we want, we want life that's always going to be sweet. We want happy moments consistently. We don't want to have to lose anything or go through anything. Heck, we don't want to feel alone when we married to somebody. But when you understand that life is the perfect blend of bitter and sweet, like this cup of coffee, then you'll have the right perspective not to lose hope and not to faint, but to endure and to have hope in the next season. Where, what does this proverb says? It says you will dance again. You may be laying on your side today, crying and wailing, and don't know what all of this is about and how you're going to make it through it. But I promise you, you will dance again. You will. And that season will come. So if you are in a lonely season in your marriage, and you're mourning any kind of loss of a loved one, loss of a friendship, loss of a job, loss of something very important to you, and you're mourning and you're not feeling connected to your spouse, hold on to this hope. You will dance again. And remember Char's cup of coffee. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. You want to maximize your season of aloneness by taking a look at what stones or offenses that you need to finally just be done with. Like, look, you're not gonna be able to punish him. You're not gonna be able to punish her. What's done is done. It's water under the bridge. It's milk that's already been spilled. Are you ready to cast them away? And what stones have you thrown at your spouse that you can take ownership of or gather to rebuild connection? So while you alone, while you having these little meetings with yourself, some real intimate time with yourself and your maker, can you take inventory of stones and take ownership of them so you can rebuild closeness when this season of being alone has passed? A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Consider this. Where are you prioritizing time alone with your creator to keep your affections balanced? Now, if you're anything like me, then you were thinking that marriage was about like finally having the love of your life and all your dreams come true, and actually idolized the institution or potentially worshipped this status called marriage. In your pursuit of love and your pursuit of happiness and your pursuit of this romance and this relationship, like what happened to your relationship with your creator? Where are you prioritizing time in your word and prayer and meditation and spending time alone? Like, your time with your creator is intended for you to be alone. I remember when I first realized this, when the seasons of alone would come into my marriage. And during these seasons, the most powerful insight into the scripture have always come when I was in the season of alone in my marriage. I always feel closer to the Most High when I'm in a season of alone in my marriage. And I've learned now, because I used to go into these seasons kicking and screaming, y'all. Oh my gosh, I used to be such a temper tantrum toddler. When the alone season came, I would get mad. I would throw out. Y'all ever see the kids throw their little body out in the stove and start kicking and get stiff? That was me. That's how much I hated being alone. And when I finally recognized the pattern that this came and it went, and it came and it went, and it came and it went, then I saw that during the times that we had an alone season in our marriage, I got the juiciest insights and revelations during my prayer time and my time studying the scriptures, because it's bringing balance to who I am in relationship, not only with my husband, but especially with my creator. So that's the consideration here. A time to get and a time to lose. Closeness is cyclical, as we've been talking about the whole time. Just like with think of it as a garden, y'all. Really, you have the season of planting, and then you have the season of things sprouting and growing, and then you have a harvest season, and then you have a season of everything died. Just like Sister Patea had mentioned in the comments earlier, like all the seasons of the earth cycle each year, those things are going to be happening during your relationship. So you'll be gaining and losing in each season. And so with the alone season, how are you making the most of it? What are you gaining from it? Because the season to be alone is not coming as a punishment. I used to view it that way. So that's why I'm speaking about it this way. It's not here as a punishment, and it's not because your husband or your wife doesn't love you anymore. It's because this is that season. Now you have an opportunity to make the most of it. How are you doing that? A time to keep and a time to cast away. Keep your values and memories of the times you felt close. Don't let them go. Don't throw them away because you don't like being alone in the moment. Hold on to them, cherish them, even while you're feeling alone, and cast away any feelings of resentment you have towards your spouse. It's not your spouse's fault that this cycle is just a part of life. It's like trying to stop the rain from raining during rainy season. It's like trying to stop the wind from blowing when there's a tornado. It's life. So rather than being mad and angry about it, just hold tight to the sweet times when you did feel close, because they are going to come back, and then you get a chance to create more of those sweet moments. A time to rend and a time to sow. Tear down your own selfishness to sow seeds that will rebuild trust and connection. And this is a repeated, it's repeated in this Proverbs. It all goes together. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. This seems self-evident, but the most important thing, emotional shutdown, is not keeping silent. There is a difference between not voicing all of your concerns, not always having a comeback, just refraining from responding and just letting the silence remain in that space. That is not the same as just completely shutting down and refusing to talk to your husband or to your wife. So there are things that you could do to make sure that maybe you are not yet really wanting to talk about the thing that was a conflict or the thing that's hurting right now. You're going to keep silent on it until the time comes for you to speak on it. But while you do that, you make sure that you communicate to your spouse how much you still love them and appreciate them. Even if there's not a whole lot that y'all are saying to each other in a season of aloneness, hey, play the dessert game, but don't disengage emotionally. That's not keeping silence. That's not aligning itself with what this scripture means. Shutting down and withdrawing emotionally hurts, and it's harmful. And we don't want to treat people that way when we really love them. A time to love and a time to hate. And that's what being alone feels like. It feels like for real, I hate you, I hate marriage, I hate how this feels. I'm wondering why is this not even making sense? Like the math is not mathing in our relationship. This is nothing like I thought it was going to be. And that's because the feeling or the emotion or the expression of love and hate are also a part of the laws of nature, and they ebb and they flow just like everything else in the laws. A time for war and a time for peace. And when you are feeling alone in your marriage, the war isn't against your spouse. The war is against the stuff that you're bringing in that's pushing your spouse away, or communicating to your spouse that you don't care for them, that you're not committed to them, that you don't love them, or that you don't accept them. Go to war on you so that you can make peace with yourself and bring that peace into your relationship, because there will be no peace in your relationship if there is no peace within. And with that, that is the Ecclesiastes 1 through 8 checklist of how to navigate no longer feeling lonely. It's not loneliness, it's just being alone for a season. And putting it into proper perspective will help you to avoid what so many people do wrong when they find themselves in this season. People mistake this season as their spouse is doing this to them, and then they emotionally withdraw from their spouse, and now you end up in a cycle of withdrawal and pushing away, withdrawal and pushing away. And then we've all heard it, people say we grew apart. Well, that's because that's where emotional withdrawal will lead. When all you're doing is going through a season of alone, when you realize it's just a season, there's no need for you to emotionally withdraw. In fact, you want to be intentional about making some small emotional connection until y'all weather the storm of this season. So, this is one big mistake that a lot of people make. You also want to avoid this other landmine of seeking external validation. Y'all, this is where the DM foolishness is taking place. So rather than recognizing that you are in a season, rather than recognizing that this is not something that your spouse is doing to you, but this is going to pass like any other storm of life, now you scrolling the internet and you trying to see who DMs you can slide into, or who's sliding into your DMs, and then you're gonna have mess. This is a huge landmine, and a lot of it happens when people are in a season of alone. They're thinking, oh, my spouse can't do it for me anymore, so I'm going to have to get it from somewhere else. No, what you need to do is you need to embrace that season, to be by yourself and to be in communion with your creator, so you can sort out some stuff that you're not doing perfectly in your marriage, rather than sliding in and out of other people's DMs and making a mess of your marriage as a result. Distractions and numbing behaviors. You're in a season of alone, and now you want to go pick up a new hobby of rebuilding a motorcycle, or something that's just going to keep you away and away and away and away. It's very, very similar to the emotional withdrawal. It's just now you are finding a pacifier, something that's going to comfort you, because rather than embracing the season as an opportunity to grow, you just want to pacify and not feel the pain of it. But if you would just lean into the pain and recognize that it will pass, and recognize that it's not the bad kind of pain, it's like the good kind of pain, like the pain that comes with a good workout when your muscles are sore, that tells you that you actually were effective in tearing down muscle and building muscle back up. That's how we want to look at being in a season of not feeling connected to your husband or to your wife, rather than going to pacify yourself so that you don't have to feel it and allow this season to make you better. Does that make sense, family? I hope that this blesses you and encourages you, especially for any of you newly married folk who are probably like trying to figure out, like, okay, why can't I stand my husband or or my wife, and why don't we feel close anymore? Like, I knew that It wasn't going to always be a perpetual honeymoon, but I didn't know it was going to actually be lonely. People express this a lot, and it is a very painful thing to navigate. But when you understand that it's going to not only happen now, but it's going to continue to happen, so until death do you part, you will go through these seasons. Prayerfully, now you have the wisdom of Solomon to help you put it into proper perspective so that you can do all of the right things so you come out better because of that season of alone. So, family, y'all know I love you, right? And I appreciate you. And please like, share, subscribe, and help us minister to marriages. Help us to serve this love and this truth, this hope and this encouragement, because marriage, look, marriage, it's a lot of work, but it's it's an institution that the Most High intended for us, because there's so much of His nature that we discover through the process of navigating life with somebody else in such an intimate and powerful way. And it is a beautiful insight into the heart of our Father. And he doesn't want us to throw marriage away. He doesn't want us to give up on love. He doesn't want us to despair and just throw in the towel because of all the escalating divorces. No, he wants us to know that this is a window to his heart for all of us, so that we can learn his nature and we can practice it with the person that's our sweetie. And if you decide to do the dessert challenge, that's what I'm going to be calling it, the dessert challenge. I would like to know, when we get together next time, whether or not you took the dessert challenge. Please share, and please, like, write down or keep a like, y'all know y'all do the little text memos in your phone for each day. What dessert? What dessert did you call your sweetheart? If you are willing to take on the dessert challenge, I would love to hear what your 7 days of sweetness are for your honey, your honey bear, your sugar pie, your boo thing. And with that, I love you all and have a blessed week.